Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Greta Koshnina, and thank you, Afton, for that introduction. I'm super excited about this today. So just some brief things before we get started. There's a sign-in sheet going around, so y'all please just fill that out, and you'll get a link to a brief survey about the lecture today. And then I also wanted to thank Afton and Rebecca Locke-Cleary, who is our communication specialist, and I'll thank Sela again, since it's in my notes, even though Afton said thank you to her also. So tomorrow, we'll have another SouthTalks here in Barnard in the same room at 4 p.m. It is an evening with Steve Holland, film and conversation. Katie McKee, the director of the center, will engage in a conversation with documentarian Rex Jones and Steve Holland, funeral home owner, Mississippi legislator, and the subject of Rex Jones's film. So yes, as Afton said, she let us pick a speaker for the semester, and I chose Coulter. She was my neighbor, for years. We've known each other for 15 years or so. I babysat her kids. Amos Henry's there in the back for years and years, and it's great to see these videos, of y'all riding in back roads like the same ones that I did when I was growing up. So today, Coulter will present a slideshow surveying the development of artworks she sews at her Water Valley, Mississippi studio. Her public-facing art studio is supplied entirely by community clothing and textile donations. She will focus on her latest developing series combining crowdsourced textiles and photography. Fussell's works compare historical and current global conflicts with interpersonal psychodramas, all while documenting rural landscapes. Coulter Fussell was born and raised in Columbus, Georgia, an old textile town. She is the youngest family quilter, hailing from multi-generations of seamstresses and quilters. She produces quilt works using discarded and donated textiles as her sole materials. Coulter has exhibited at galleries across the country, and her works are in the permanent collections of the Columbus Museum of Art and the Mississippi Museum of Art. Among other awards, Coulter is a 2024 Barbara Deming Fund grantee, a 2024 Award of Merit recipient from the Mississippi Historical Society, a 2019 and 2023 Mississippi Institute of Arts and Letters Visual Arts inductee, the Jane Crater Hyatt Fellow of 2021 Mississippi Museum of Art Biennial, a 2019 United States Artist Fellow in Craft, and the finalist for a 2017 South Arts Southern Prize. And Coulter lives in Water Valley, Mississippi. So please help me give a warm welcome to Coulter Fussell.
All right, thanks, Greta. I know basically everybody in this room. So those who I don't know, my name is Coulter Fussell, and I live in Water Valley, Mississippi. I have a textile studio there where people drop off donations, and I make textile works with all of their donations. The donations range from like clothes to quilts to whatever. You'll see as I go through the slides. I learned to sew from my mother, who's a prolific quilter in her own right, and I was raised by a father who was a Southern folklorist, and also an arts museum curator. So I sort of, from the beginning, had this like mesh up of like craft and what people would consider finer arts serving the same functions. So you'll probably see that come across in some of my work. The artist talk today, I'm gonna go through my studio, show you some slides of my studio, because that is the catalyst for all of it. I wouldn't be doing this without my studio or the donations. And then I'll go through a couple of series real quick, my River Raft quilt series and my War quilt series, and then how those have turned into this new photography series. And I'll start by saying I know nothing about photography, and I don't use my own photographs. And so this talk says photography and textiles. It's really like how I use photography in textiles, okay? All right, so here's my storefront on Main Street, and that is a donation. Somebody dropped a bunch of stuff off. We live in a material world, especially down here. People get stuff for generations and generations and generations. They have nowhere to put it. They feel too guilty to throw it away. There's one of my kids, my youngest kid, in front of another large donation, and he hates when I use this slide because of his outfit, and he was like prepubescent. Anyway, he's like 14 or 15 now. That's sort of what a typical donation looks like. I'll get to work and somebody has left a box of like random stuff at the studio door. Sometimes they will leave other things besides clothes and textiles. In this case, they left old suitcases, which had old clothes and textiles in them. And I used the suitcases in a piece. So some of this becomes like sculptural. This is, somebody left me a jar of black walnuts to dye fabric with. This was actually left by John and Lauren Stokes, who own the Tarrasque. And it's really funny because I'm not in short supply of black walnuts. Like, they're literally everywhere. Like, you know, people are like trying to get rid of them. People bring me these a lot. A friend of mine shelled a bunch of purple hull peas and brought those, and thought since they stained her fingers that they might dye fabric. I thought that was sweet. They don't dye fabric, but I told her they did. That was Becky Tatum, for anybody who knows her. So this was one of my favorite donations. It was a bag that said fancy stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I got some fancy stuff, you know? And it was doll heads and doll arms. The arms too, the little and so it really runs the gamut. Like, I'll get stuff from somebody's aunt who was a doll maker, or like she sort of specialized in something. So I'll get like a donation that's all embroidery stuff, you know. I get animal pelts. And so, you know, there's a lot of hunters and stuff around here, so occasionally I'll get animal skins. You can see those are two on the right, actual like raccoon faces. That's muscadine wine that somebody left me. And he did a red and a white. But on the left, you can see the sort of edge of a beaver tail. And I've been given 3 beaver tails. Okay, so this is sort of what the inside of the studio looks like. I have clothing racks with all the fabrics on them, and then I sort of pull stuff down and cut on the floor and then compose on the floor. And that's where I sew. The older I've had this specific studio now for 10 years, and the older I get, the harder that is becoming, working on the floor. And so my work is starting to sort of change because of that. Another interior shot of my studio, that quilt in the background is a big star quilt made by my great-great-grandmother and great-great-great-grandmother. There are 5 of those. And the other 4 are in absolutely perfect condition, and my mother and aunts have those, and I got the one that was clearly given to the dog, you know. And so maybe one day I'll, like, you know, be worthy of the others. This is just a local seamstress coming into the studio to get some elastic, and that happens sometimes. I'll get a little knock at the door, and somebody will come in and like, do you have a spool of thread, you know, and I'll give it to them. Okay, so this is starting my River Raft Quilt series. This is a series of works that are sort of these conceptual rafts, these sort of conceptual vessels. And they are meant to be sort of this like Huck Finn, Alice in Wonderland, like adventure downriver for a woman and her children. And I grew up in a river town. It was a cotton mill town, and we had a lot of, well, it was Fort Benning, now Fort Moore, and so the river was lined on one side by cotton mills. And so in this series of river raft quilts, I'm thinking of a woman and her children sort of getting on an escape raft down the Chattahoochee River and going all the way down the river and to the, you know, out where it goes in Apalachicola to the Gulf of Mexico. And these rafts are sort of equipped with whatever she might need for that journey or adventure. This is about 9 feet tall, and the Mississippi Museum of Art owns this. And so on the right side, you've got these sort of inflated rows for like flotation. You've got I knitted an escape tunnel there at the bottom. And there's like this plastic pom-pom on the top that could like show wind direction, you know. There's a bomber jacket that said hot water soup on it that was given to me. Then I was like, well, that's food, you know. These are sort of a playful take on some serious subjects, which you'll find is basically my entire artwork. This is another river raft quilt. This is about 9 feet wide. This also doesn't exist anymore because I take my work apart all the time and make other work. But those big like sort of whirly gigs are from a quilt from Texas, an 1880s needle turn applique, and it sort of reminded me of this big like river raft. I mean, this big paddle boat that was on the river where I grew up, called the Jubilee, and it had like these big like paddles that like turned the water up, you know. And then there's the first hint of photography, and that's some photographs of peach trees, peach orchards along the highway where I'm from. And that was taken from a Kodachrome slide my dad took in the 1980s. And I printed it on fleece. Here's a river raft quilt for your dog. And it's small. It's made out of a rocking chair ruffle, you know, like that your grandmother might have in the seat of a rocking chair. And I just inflated it with polyfill. There's a picture of a dog on the porch in there. And I took some raccoon tails and put them on there for your dog. Let's see. Here's a river raft quilt for your garden, for your flowers. So if you got to get up and go, you can take your garden with you. And there's like airbrush on there. I dyed this the fluorescent yellow. This is also, you know, the size of a rocking chair seat ruffle, which is like my smaller works. A river raft quilt. All of these are pretty big. This is about 5 feet wide. This is called Mama Upriver, and this is about your mother's life before she was your mother. Like, what was her river journey before you got there? And so I've got sort of an overview of maybe, you know, Columbus on the right. Columbus is the town I'm from, and then on the left is like sort of the water imagery. And an actual photograph of my mother from when she was 19, printed on whatever they printed it on then, just cardstock, I guess. And there's one of the beaver tails, sort of supposed to act as like a rudder. And this river raft quilt is pretty funny because my studio flooded a couple of years ago, and it was horrible until I realized that all my work just dries out because it's made of fabric. And you can actually see across the middle of this work a water line from the flood. And I thought it was pretty cool that one of my river raft quilts actually sort of stood up to real water. There's another one. This is about 6 feet wide. And the suitcases in the beginning that we saw, inside was all this like sexy lingerie and night clothes from like the 50s. And they had been sun bleached, which is also odd. And so that sort of blue cloud area material was from those suitcases. It wound up sort of emulating clouds so perfectly. And then over here where it says deaf and it's like water dripping down, there was this dude in my high school that was in the 90s that was the jeans painter. And he painted everybody jeans, and we bought them, and I still had mine. So that's about 6 or 7 feet tall. This is called Columbus Wall, and it's an overview map of my hometown. You have Columbus, Georgia on the right with like cotton mills, like in the squares, the Velvet Squares, the R.C. Cola factory, where my dad worked for a little while. The metal mesh up there is the iron foundries. And then Columbus is a dueling city, or a sister city, sort of with Phoenix City, Alabama, and so the two ruffles are the two cities. I use other people's paintings in my work as well. That's a Mike Howard painting of that R.C. Cola can. He gave it to me, I just took it off the canvas and put it in my own work. I do that stuff all the time. Okay, here's a very large piece. I guess it's like 8 or 9 feet tall. It's quilt sized, and this is called Girls Trip. And where I'm from, West Central Georgia, it's sort of very much a rite of passage to go to Panama City when you're a teenager. And so this is the Panama City trip going down the Chattahoochee River to, you know, North Florida. And so, you know, I'm using airbrush, cut and sew dolls, sort of popular figures in pop culture, you know, and layering that all with sort of these quick crafts, which is the cut and sew doll. And in the top right, that's a pre-printed quilt. That's not a real handmade quilt. It's a quilt that's made to look like a handmade quilt, which that sort of stuff is very fascinating to me. Like, why? Yeah, I could talk about this stuff forever. Okay, This is my war quilt series. I grew up next to Fort Moore, and so there was a lot of military every minute of my life growing up, and it was very normal to see soldiers everywhere all the time. And so that sort of imagery was just sort of really ingrained in me. Like, you know, the kids, we would go to Goodwill and get the fatigues. It would be very normal for half the kids in Columbus to be wearing like old fatigues from the Goodwill store or whatever. So I have a whole series of works about conflict and war and how these like big current and historical global conflicts very much mimic what happens like in interpersonal conflict. And so this work is about 5-6 feet. It's called Country Captain. And Country Captain is this dish we grew up eating in Columbus, Georgia, growing up. It's got like East Indian origins. And it was the only curry dish we had in my whole, it was the singularly, you could only get that flavor where I grew up in that one dish. And it came to us through the military. The first arrived in Columbus through Fort Benning. And so in this quilt on the left, I have the base is a traditional Indian kantha quilt. And then on the right is a chenille quilt, which is originally made from Georgia, from Dawson, Georgia. So this piece is sort of about the cross-cultural exchange between like the textile and like military industries and how there's all this like, you know. Whenever I use the grandmother's attic windows, that's what that sort of 3D pattern is. It's in reference to like sort of compartmentalization, you know, like putting things in places. Those 3 cigarette packs were in a donation in the front pocket of a work shirt. They're those soft packs. I'm sure they're from like the 50s. Another war quilt, this is called Graft and Stealth. And there's a souvenir pillow from Fort Benning and paratroopers coming down on this mountain lion, who I view as like maternal. And it's like she's, in my view, she's being sort of stalked, but she knows, she's aware, and she's in this sort of digitized polyester forest. These pieces are starting to now, at this point, become three-dimensional. I'm layering upholstery foam. This one actually comes out a few layers toward you. So I'm sort of starting to become sculptural with some of these. And then also using chiffon as shadows, which is, I sort of started, chiffon is a translucent material if you don't know, and it's good for shadows. A very, very, very big quilt is about 12 feet, you know, whatever that's called, across the circle. And it's built on a caterer's tablecloth. I spent many, many years in the restaurant industry and at a little place called Ajax, maybe you've heard of it. And that's where I met Jimmy. Anyway, so a lot of my work references restaurant stuff a lot. And so this is built on a caterer's tablecloth, and it's sort of supposed to look like one of the, in my mind, it was a paratrooper's parachute. And like it's coming down, twirling down, and it's like a mother and her kids, and you're sort of going toward this sort of vague X, you know. Yeah, it's called Jump School, which is the first week of paratrooper training at Fort Benning. This is called Hawks. This is about 12 feet wide, and I just really wanted to use some of these animal blankets I get in. You know, there's a whole like world of reversible animal blankets, and they're too fun not to use. And so anyway, this is sort of 2 birds of prey who are about to fight. And you know, when birds fight, immediately when they lock up in the air, they suddenly lose their greatest ability, which is to fly, and they just become these 2 things that fall to the ground. And so this is the moment right before they're about to lock up and lose their like great superpower, and how they could choose to maybe not do that. This is a war quilt called the Proving Ground. It's about 5.5, 6 feet wide. This one is sort of, it's a war quilt. There is, you know, the Proving Ground is referencing like nuclear testing out in the Pacific. And it's got these lenticular postcards, so as you walk by, the palm trees appear and disappear depending on your perspective. And this work is really sort of, in my view, about like how perspectives do change in conflict between people or just yourself, depending on how you're looking at it or whatever. And yet again, that's a grandmother's, or it's either grandmother's windows or attic windows. Quilt block names are never the same. Gives that 3D effect, sort of like compartmentalizing things. And I'm using like just novelty jacquard souvenir blankets mixed with, cantha quilts and then traditional American quilt patterns. Okay, so this is where we're going to start talking about where the photography really starts to enter. Let me get some water. My dad's singular slide of peach trees pretty much inspired this whole thing. So my father's taken bajillion photographs in his life, and he used to put them all in the slide carousel, and me and my brothers would like stand in front of them, and like the pictures when we were kids, not as adults, and the pictures would be on our bodies and stuff. And so my dad's slides are like a big deal to me. And so I asked him to send me some to work with, and he sent me several plants. I wanted flora, and he sent me. This was the one I was really attracted to. It's a scene in West Central Georgia I've seen a million times, and it's just a highway with peach trees. So I printed it onto chiffon, and before I'd been printing onto like velvet or cotton or fleece fabrics that were not translucent. But once I printed it onto chiffon, it opened up a whole new like visual way of manipulating these materials, because it became immediately much more painterly. I was able to layer these things not only with their own images, but with other colors behind them. And so it created this real sort of like dreamy feel where you couldn't decide, is this a memory? Is this a dream? Whose view is this? It was sort of accomplishing what I've been trying to really get across in some of the other works. Okay, and so using other people's photographs, so I was already outsourcing material, and so then I started to outsource photographs. And so then I realized my two sons had this just abundance of videos on their phones, which was sort of in my mind also like all the abundance of materials, like textile materials I was getting. Because they're always like, Mama, look at this video, look at this, and they're like always on Snapchat or whatever doing their things. And so I was like, can you send me that video? I'm going to use it in my work. And wow, don't ask your teenagers to send you their Snapchats. But they did. They've been really good about it. And I don't know what this one is, so we're going to. Okay. This is Amos Henry and his friends spinning trucks at sunset out in Yalobusha County. And it's got very loud country music playing and screaming. But I thought it was so beautiful. And so what I do is I slow these down and I take screenshots and image stills of them, and I print them on gauze and chiffon, and then I make my works with them. There's another one. These are all upholstered, so they're real rounded, these like organic forms. This is New Year's Eve, and some kid named Jacory has exploded a whole bunch of Roman candles in the back of a pickup truck, and everybody's screaming his name and vulgarities. That's why everything's silenced, by the way. And it is the funniest video, but it's really pretty, even though like 15 kids almost died in that video. And so I take it and I print it on the chiffon. Now, the video was not that color. I don't manipulate the color on the computer. I just take the straight video, print it straight on chiffon, exactly how it is. There's no manipulation whatsoever. Any sort of color that's coming through and makes it look glowing is all the polyester and fluorescence from the donated materials that go behind the chiffon. So under these is a very abstract, blocky painting, and then on top is the chiffon layering of the images, which gives it all different moods. I mean, you can see in the red part in the middle, there's places where I put blue behind, and then places where it's a hot pink, so you get this bright red and this purple. And the fireworks were just super inspiring. So I've made like 15 different hearts. That's a McCall's heart pillow pattern from like the 1980s. My youngest son sends me landscapes. My oldest son sends me the exciting stuff. My youngest son treats it as like an assignment in class. He's like, she likes landscapes. She wants a light source from one side, And this is his first trip to the beach with friends. And so that was a big deal where I was from. And I know it's a big deal for every kid, but I was like kind of excited to. And so these are upholstered. Those are rounded. You can't see it in the photograph, but it's not flat. It's like pillows. There's another one. That was at Southside recently. That's called Silver Sands. And so that's got Booker, my youngest kid's beach photos, and then Amos's fireworks videos, and then some upholstery. There's some condominiums, beach, and you can see there's some striping on some of that. That's just a striped material behind the chiffon. Okay, so I get a lot of boys partying at night. And so it'll just be these videos like that, 3 seconds long, total chaos, But I'm looking for the moment in there that I know is there. I don't have to make up these sort of poetic, mysterious moments. I know they're already in there. It's like the textiles. It's just a matter of finding it, Oh, yeah. So that's what I screenshotted. Because I was like, that is so kind of pretty and weird. And it's got that great orange, like, trapezoid angle or whatever. And it's like, anyway. And so I layered that in this big upholstery. That's in the center image, and on the back is Amos and one of his friends, like, wrestling on this sofa in, like, the blue glow of a video game, So just sort of like teenage boy chaos. There's sort of a close-up, because this one also undulates. It's like pillow-like. Okay, I'm nervous every time I play one of these. Oh, yeah. That's D. He's like a D1 athlete, and the kid that got thrown into the air was Amos, and they're very good friends. But that was one of their snow days at Water Valley, and so I loved that video. It was so funny, even though my child almost got killed. And so I was going through it, and I was like, well, I gotta pick where his legs are in the air, and he's like flailing, but it didn't work, and it was seeming not right. And so the very, very beginning of the video, in the background, Amos and his friend Grant start to spar for like a second before Amos gets thrown through the air. And that was the thing I was looking for, So sometimes it's not the obvious thing, it's the thing over there, And so that's all printed the same color. I just put different colors behind it. So if there's any fabric people in here, or, just chiffon is just so magic. Organza, tulle, netting, any of that. Oh God, this one just, as a mother. I was like, Amos Henry, don't ever do that again.
Where was that?
It's like, they call it the drop-off. And it's local. I mean, it's like on the way to, it's between Water Valley and Oxford. And anyway, they go there all the time. They're not supposed to. And so I screenshotted that and sort of have this like young figure like going freely flying through the air, and this sort of like, it makes you feel less anxiety and more freedom in that one. Oh, Lord. Oh, God. Okay. I wish I could tell you the audio on this one. All right, they're chasing donkeys through a field on four-wheelers and in pickup trucks. And they are screaming, "We're chasing donkeys, oh my God." There's lots of expletives. And they're in the night just chasing these animals through a field. And it is so funny. I mean, I feel bad for the donkeys, but I don't think it lasted long. So I really loved the donkey footage, and I've used it over and over and over again. Because it's got this, what I'm looking for is a very bright area, in a really dark area, lots of contrast, so that I can make the background color be different. You know, I can use like one piece of pink and it'll be different in the background over here, and over here will be super, super bright. Brooke, as a painting person, you probably know the words for what I'm describing. So yeah, that's more hearts. I love fluorescence. That on the right, that's actually from another video of them jumping in their swimming hole at night. They go out to the swimming hole and race hell and do like who knows what. And so I have lots of videos of them jumping in the water and making these splashes, and it's really pretty. This is a portrait by my younger son. That's his friend Tellis. He's standing on a pile of deer feed, corn, and he just shot the raccoon. And so I made that into like this sort of like waving flag figure. Tellis, all these kids go to Lafayette County High School. Well, some of them go to Water Valley. There is my oldest son back there, Amos Henry, laying out in his front seat of his car. My kids are muses. Lots of women artists use their kids or their muse or whatever. Mine are sort of muses in different ways. My oldest kid, he sort of challenges me by giving me these videos. Like, I dare you to put this one in a piece, you know. Whereas my youngest kid sends me photographs where he's really fulfilling an assignment of beauty, you know. But, you know, Amos, my oldest kid, has this sort of long, lean body, and he photographs well. And so I use him as a subject a lot. And that one's about 6 feet wide. All right, we're getting toward the end. Okay. That's this cute girl, Taylor Snyder's Snapchat or TikTok or whatever, but it's my kid, Amos, in my Corolla doing backwards donuts in a parking lot. Anyway, I figure I might as well make the best of it. So I made a big artwork of it. And that was, you know, Taylor had used a filter, I think, on her video, and so it gave it this purple tint. And I don't filter any of the other videos, and the boys rarely do. So it was kind of cool to work with a filtered photograph that, I mean, I don't know, maybe it was naturally sort of purple that way. And so then I got to add more reds and stuff and blues to change, you know, the warmth or coolness of the photograph. Now, this is just something in my phone. It was a picture of the Chattahoochee River from 2014 that I took. And I'm starting a new series that is going to the Bo Bartlett Center on the Chattahoochee River about my works that have to do with the Chattahoochee River. And so I took that and printed it really, really, really big. And that's, you know, I don't know, 5 feet by 5 feet. And that one's also highly upholstered. You can't see it on these 2D slide images, but it very much undulates. And this is the last slide. I love this piece just because it's 3 generations. The fireworks are photographs and videos sent to me by my oldest son, Amos Henry. And then it's got the peach tree Kodachrome slide image from my father. And then, of course, I made it. So that's called Roman Candles and Peach Trees. And yeah, so I love the intergenerational aspect of that one. This last series is going to, these are the beginning stages of it building to a show that is going to be at the Mississippi Museum of Art in March of 2026. And we just received an Andy Warhol Foundation grant for that show. And so it's all based on these photographs that my kids have taken and donated to my studio. So, yeah, okay, that's it. Thank you. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask real quick about your upcoming exhibit.
LV Hole. Yeah, it's like a concurrent show. They wrote the grant for both of us. So each show has separate curators, but the shows are supposed to sort of be, as they say, in conversation with each other. And it's about, like, you know, rural placemaking, taking what you have and making it work. Yeah, I'm very excited. Yeah. John?
Thank you for this, Coulter. As you know, I'm married to an artist, and one of my great pleasures in life is moving through the world and running into one of her pieces somewhere, like whether I'm in Oxford or in New York or wherever I might be. And I wonder, thinking about your pieces, which you make for museums and for galleries, but you make to sell as well. And I wonder, where do they land? You have stories of people who purchase your pieces, and is there a weird juxtaposition of they bought it for X and you made it for Y? Is there an afterlife story of these pieces in your life?
Well, there's two totally different there's the institutional art path, and then there's the gallery art path, and it is very hard for some of us to do both. I've had not a hard time with institutional shows. It's easy for me, not easy, it's all hard. It's easier for me to get institutional shows because my stuff is weird and huge and takes a bunch of risk. Very hard to sell. It is difficult for me to sell a work, and because it has to go in your home, and then it also has to look good with your other artwork, and so it's. And as I'm married to a gallery owner, I see both of this, and he's always given me advice that starts, if you want to sell it, you might want to frame it, and so anyway, all that's sort of. It's a learning as you go sort of thing, because when I wanted to be an artist when I was a kid, I didn't understand that. I don't think many artists do understand until they get there. They're like, oh, wait a minute, I can get a museum show, but I can't get a gallery to call me back, or vice versa,
Are you adapting as you go to take one of those paths? Or?
Yeah, the art leads the way. And then, I have to do what the art dictates. And I can't really make a decision to go one way or the other if that's not where the work's going. But I do things to help myself out. Like I'll make, and some of y'all know this, like I'll make small works and sell them for like $150, and to my people who follow me on Instagram or whatever. And that is not just a way for me to make money. That is because those are the people who've been interested in my work since I was waiting tables at Ajax. The textile women, the crafters and quilters that follow me on Instagram have been the ones who've supported my work way before anybody else was even really paying attention. And so I try to make work that's accessible to people like me. Would I love to sell like one of these big pieces to a private collection for a lot of money? I think that will hopefully happen one day, but it is very, very difficult. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Coulter, could you talk about mentoring? Because it seems like to me, following you for a number of years, that you really have done a great job of mentoring others that are interested in fabric and art.
Well, I think some of that is just the nature of craft. It comes with the territory. You learn it from somebody sharing it with you. And so, I talk it back to making money. Like one of the things I have to do sometimes is teach workshops, and not have to, I like to do it. But yeah, so I'm a very I spend many hours of the day very much alone in my studio as I like it. I want to be there from 9 to 4 with no one else. But I do know that I was given all this stuff for free in terms of the knowledge, and I will always give it back, So, yeah. Anybody else? Jimmy?
I've got a question about your, you were saying people donate things to you so you can make your own dyes.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that process? What
Yeah.
you get from and how that happens?
Well, in when it goes to what we saw earlier, the black walnut, you don't have to do anything to treat the fabric for that. Black walnut comes with built-in tannins. Tannin makes dyes when the color chemically fixes to the fabric. A stain is when it sits on top. So when a fabric is dyed, the chemicals have interchanged and become one. And black walnuts already have the tannin in it that makes that possible. So otherwise you have to treat fabrics, and there's various ways to treat fabrics. But yeah, I use black walnuts, goldenrod, coreopsis, also called tick seed, and sumac. And that's all grows here, and it usually all comes out really in sort of the late summer to fall. Yeah, and you just boil it. Yeah, you make like a broth or a stock. And then you, depending on how you want the fabric to look, then you take the material out and you put the fabric in there and boil it for a while and then hang it up to dry. Mm-hmm. All right, well, oh, okay.
Along the same lines as Jenny's question, I'm so, or anything, so forgive me if I'm really supposed to know this, but, well, two parts. I'm curious about the printing of the photograph onto chiffon, like what that looks like in your studio. And maybe I'm inviting myself to your studio to see it, maybe that's what I'm also saying. What does that look like? What
Yeah,
does
no, that's a good question. What's the? Oh, you can ask the second part.
And the part two is the quilting.
Uh-huh.
So quilt, to my mind, is squares woven together. Is that also after you've done photographs on?
Okay, so there's lots of ways to get a photograph on fabric. Back in like 1980s, 1990s with your mom, crafting ways is to iron a piece of fabric to freezer paper, cut it out to be the shape of a piece of paper like what you'd write on, and run it through your printer. The freezer paper stabilizes the fabric and it just prints right onto the fabric. Then you take the freezer paper off and you've got fabric with a photograph. An old quilter's trick, they know everything. And if there's a problem, a quilter's already solved it. That's one thing I've learned. And but these, because chiffon is so delicate, these are sent off to a fabric printing company. It's an American-owned company called Spoonflower. It's based in North Carolina. It's a Southern company. And quilters have been using it for years, and it's terrific. So yeah, chiffon is also really hard to sew. So a lot of these are hand sewn or upholstered around the edge so that there's actually no stitching on some of the, what would look like a seam, but they're secured around the backside. All right, yeah, thank y'all.